Today I am giving an informative speech on the Child and Adult Care Food Program. It is for my COMS 1110 public speaking class. According to the Nebraska Legislation Research Office, in 2018, Nebraska children had a food insecurity rate of 16.7%, translating to 79,310 children in the state of Nebraska that were considered food insecure. By following the Nebraska CACFP, the Child and Adult Care Food Program guidelines, you can ensure while meal planning for schools and child care centers that this number could be reduced. Today we'll be discussing what you need to know to plan a meal following the CACFP guidelines, and by doing this I will be educating you on how to identify the components, the appropriate portion sizes, and the meal plan patterns. I have worked in child care centers that follow the Nebraska CACFP guidelines for 20 years. For the last 10, I went to annual trainings that teach the regulations and any updates and any changes that have been made. So that is giving me a strong background to be able to share that with you. You all have probably had food insecure children in your class, whether you know it or not. Now to explain how to effectively plan nutritious meals for group care, following the guidelines to ensure that every meal supports healthy growth, development, and overall well-being. We will start with the components. There are 5 main components. We partnered up the fruits and vegetables. The fruit and vegetable components do vary based on the meal that you're serving. In lunches and suppers, they do want to see both fruits and vegetables. In snacks and breakfasts, you have options of fruits or vegetables typically. Grains also vary per meal as far as what's required, and that can vary anywhere from crackers, bagels, oats, bread, tortillas, dinner rolls, buns, and they do like to see whole grain rich grains in at least 1 serving of that grain per day, no matter the age of the child or adult. Proteins are meat or meat alternates, so there can be some substitutes if you have non-meat eaters in your programs, but they still want a protein portion in most dinners and lunch. Snack and breakfast is not required. Dairy for meals does have to be a fluid, for lunch and breakfast does have to be a fluid dairy, so they want milk. There are substitutions of milks that are approved, but we're not going to go into all of that today. As far as the other dairy goes, cheese, yogurt, cottage cheese, those things can be served, but not counting as your dairy component for breakfast or lunch. Portion sizes. So the portion size vary based on the child and the meal and the item that you're serving. So for this presentation, we're going to discuss the portion sizes for a lunchtime meal for a child that's 3 to 5 years old. The fruits and vegetables, they want 4 ounces total, so 2 ounces of each fruit and vegetable. They do encourage fresh fruits and vegetables when possible, as well as variety of fruits and vegetables, so they don't want you serving strawberries for all 3 meals if you have the option to change it up. For the grains, it is a 1/2 ounce of grain. That does vary based on the grain that you're serving, so depending on the size, you may be able to include just like a dinner roll, or you may have to include, I believe it was 3/8 of a cup of pasta accounts for that 1/2 ounce of grain for if you're doing it like a noodle and spaghetti. Proteins, 1.5 ounce of protein. That can be broken down into tablespoons. Like I think it's 3 tablespoons if you're counting peanut butter as your protein or any other sort of nut butter. If you're using beans, it's 3/8 a cup of beans as your protein. If you're looking for alternatives for the non-meat eaters, otherwise 1.5 ounce piece of beef, chicken, pork, something along those lines. And then dairy for a 3 to 5 year old is 6 ounces, and they want during the lunch component, like I said before, fluid milk, and it does have to be 1% unflavored milk for those 3 to 5 year olds. I do have a handout on other meals and serving sizes for different age groups. ages 1 to 2 and 3 to 5, if anyone would be interested in that afterwards. Next, we'll talk about the meal pattern requirements. So I did kind of talk a little bit about those already. There are, on the food program, there are 5 meal options throughout the day. So there's a breakfast, a morning snack, a lunch, an afternoon snack, and a dinner. Most places do just serve breakfast, lunch, and afternoon snack. So that's the meal pattern requirements that we're going to talk about today. The breakfast always has to require a fluid milk in the appropriate amount of ounces for the age of the children, as well as the appropriate milk. So I had said before, the 3 to 5 year olds do need 1% unflavored milk. The 1 to 2 year olds need the whole milk, because they need that fat for their little brains. The fruit or vegetable with breakfast, most people do a fruit. Not many people eat vegetables for breakfast, but most people would do a fruit. So for this example, we're going to have our fluid milk, we're going to have, say, strawberries, and then the grain, we are going to do a waffle. So we have fluid milk, strawberries, and waffle for breakfast, all 3 components required. Lunch, also fluid milk, same requirements we talked about. A meat or a meat alternate. So we're going to do a ounce and a half of ground beef. So we have our fluid milk, an ounce and a half of ground beef. Our vegetable, we could do fresh green beans. And then a fruit, since we already did a strawberry, we could do a banana. And for a grain, we could do a tortilla. You could add cheese to that if you wanted it to be in there, but it wouldn't necessarily count as your dairy component. But for lunch, all 5 components are required. And then for snack is the one you get to be a little more creative with. You only have to have 2 components, and it doesn't have to be fluid milk. It could be any sort of dairy, any meat alternate, vegetable, fruit, and a grain. So for this example, we could do, say, like cottage cheese and sliced cucumbers. So now you've introduced them to 3 different fresh fruits, 2 different vegetables, and a new dairy choice that they may not have at home. And that's something that you would watch, because we're wanting to serve them meals that are meeting these requirements, but also that they would eat. So that's something you would watch. If they're not really liking the cucumbers with the cottage cheese, maybe mix it up next time and do pineapple and see if they would like that differently. So most importantly, you're providing them with the correct items, but you're also encouraging them to eat it. Having explored the components, the portion sizes, and the meal requirements for the CACFP guidelines, you can see how this lays a solid foundation for the eating habits of the young children and can reduce the food insecurities. By understanding and implementing what we discussed, you as a caregiver can foster healthy eating habits and create positive mealtime experiences, ensuring that every child receives the nutrients and meals that they need to thrive. Let's work together to ensure that every child has access to healthy meals, because no child should have to worry about where their next meal is coming from. Thank you guys for listening. If you're interested in the handout, I can provide that to you at a later time.